Oh man, episode 6. We made it. Sorry guys, it's taken quite a while to get this one up, but I'm trying to bring you quality, and that takes time to do. My guest today is my good friend Josh Cook, known him for a long time, and I did not know this side of him. I think you're going to really appreciate the vibe and flow of this conversation. Plus, we speak about some pretty rare and controversial things. His son suffers from an Isodicentric 15 duplication. I'm going to let him explain what that is, but it's essentially a duplication of one of his chromosomes, of the 15th chromosome. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give you my good friend, Josh Cook. The Zen Podcast. Grow your mind.
The dude abides.
All right, and we are live. Josh, appreciate you doing this, man.
Thank you, sir.
Tried to do this one time before. Had some audio problems.
We did.
But we are here at Lander University, and we're going to riff on all kind of things. So it's funny because I've known you for, I've known you for a while, 5, 6, 7 years. And
Yes.
I don't think I even really knew exactly what you did until today.
Well, that's, it's funny because some people define their life by their career. And I am definitely not one of those people. I love what I do. I love teaching. But I'm so into things outside of work, especially with kids and my jiu-jitsu and my wife and all that kind of stuff, that sometimes work for me is just like, okay, I got bills to pay. That's why I go to work.
Yeah, I don't hear you
even
talk
though
about
I
it a
love
whole
my
lot.
job.
Well, it's cool because it ties in because you do jiu-jitsu. We've been training together for years. And then you're also teaching strength and conditioning.
I do.
Yep. So, because I don't know much about that part of your life, I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you got into that and what you do day to day.
Well, what happened with me? I mean, the reason why I ever walked into a weight room, I was about. Well, I remember as a kid, I would go with my cousins to the high school weight room, stuff like that. I remember doing some of that, lifting with the football players and all that, and we get in groups of. It was a big high school. We get in groups of 4 or 5, and I was like 13, so I mean, I was terrible at it. But I always thought it was interesting. But it was one of those things. I'd sit in my room. I had those DP from JCPenney weight set.
DP.
Yeah, DP.
What's
that was
that?
a name brand. It was just a name brand.
Some Dr. Pepper weights.
Yeah, it was those like ones you see plastic wrapped around them and stuff.
I had those too.
Everybody always has them on their front porch.
So were you like me? You had like muscle and fitness magazines with these huge dudes with fire hoses for veins.
Later on. Actually,
Yeah.
I didn't get into that until later on. Actually, with that, what I wanted to be was, I always got my inspiration when we had one house to where there was just a room at the top that nobody used. It was just a room. So I put the weights in there. And I'd go in there and I'd lift. Thinking about it now, it was so dangerous because I didn't have any spotters. I'd put all the weight on it.
Because you
I
thought
could have
of
killed
that.
myself many
You're thinking at that
times.
time, it's like, I'm going to try to move as
Yeah.
much weight as possible.
I didn't realize you probably needed somebody to spot you while you were doing it. And so anyway, I would lift and stuff like that. And I thought it was neat and all that kind of stuff. But as I got a little bit older, I started lifting more in my room. I'd have these I just do curls, stuff like that. And I'd have people say, wow, man, you're kind of filling out a little bit and stuff. And I still didn't know what I was doing. I might be doing 1,000 reps with one arm and then 10 on the other. I still was and this was as I was getting maybe like 15, 16, stuff like that. But around 17, I joined the YMCA. And it was funny because I got into weight training because I never was really picked on. But I was always that guy that was like, we're not going to pick him for, sports. It's going to be the last
So
guy.
are you like uncoordinated?
Very
clumsy?
uncoordinated. And that really
Yeah.
hasn't changed, but extremely uncoordinated, all this kind of stuff. But I got into weights because I said, I want something else to do. And so I picked that up and really got into it. My body really responded extremely well. I got into the nutrition portion. I got into all this kind of stuff. Of course, I'm reading Flex magazine, thinking those guys at one point were natural. I don't know why I ever thought that.
I did too. I thought that I could reach that, or at least something close to it, without doing a bunch of steroids and stuff.
A lot of Mexican supplements.
Yeah, all those dudes are on that stuff.
They're loaded with
And it's not regulated, right? Like bodybuilding competitions are not.
If they actually regulated it, there would be no bodybuilding competition.
I could
They do
step
have
into
natural now, but I've always said, when you look at a natural guy who's doing bodybuilding competitions and a Mr. Olympia,
So
which one do you
world
normally want to
difference.
look like? I still want to look like Mr. Olympia guy.
Do you really? You want to be
Yeah.
that?
Not so
You
much
want to be?
now.
You want to be Ronnie Coleman, Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Not so much now, but when you looked at it, it was kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
let me look at the Natural Bodybuilding magazine where a guy, you know.
Yeah, you want to go to the extreme. It's like when
I
you're.
want to get where I can't sit on the toilet correctly.
You want to
because
watch,
I
like if
don't fit.
you're trying to learn from somebody who does jiu-jitsu, you want to learn from Marcelo Garcia or Hodger Gracie or something.
Yeah, I don't want an online black belt.
Yeah.
You know, in other words, I want to learn from the world champions, or at least somebody, you know, that is, you definitely can tell, hey, this guy's he knows what he's talking about.
Well, I think we're very fortunate to have Professor Miller, who I interviewed last episode or 2 episodes prior to this. I still got one that I got to put out. I think sometimes it's easy for me, especially with me not training right now, to take for granted the caliber of what he teaches and just how good a black belt he is. You've seen him in competition even, right?
I've seen him in competition, but it's not even just competition. Because you got guys that are really, really good at competitions that are just natural athletes, really good, maybe studs wrestling or something like that. Maybe beforehand football they were studs, but can't teach you a freaking armbar to save their life because they know how to do it. They don't understand why they do it. You know,
the underlying mechanics.
Yeah, it's like teaching somebody how to do math, but not explaining why. 2 + 2 = 4. Well, why does 2 + 2 = 4? Well, I don't really know. This is just what I've been told.
And what is it applicable to?
Yeah.
Now, so you teach college-age students. Are many of them athletes?
Some of them are. I do have some of them. Because I teach a activity class and we require students to have activity classes here, I do get a lot of athletes, but I get a lot of the general pop. My class right now is not so much a specialized weight training, it's a general weight training.
You get to design the exercises and the...
I can, yes. We've been using some that were already pre-designed beforehand from a colleague of mine. But I can change them up anytime I want to.
Now, how much room is there for you to individualize a workout for a student who has specific goals different than another student?
With this class, none. I only see these guys 1 day a week.
You're focusing on like compound movements?
Yeah, we're doing the big movements. We're doing squats. We're doing the bench press. We're doing these basic, hey, this is what you would normally see in a weight room. I can't really individualize. I don't have them enough.
Right.
And you know what? At this moment, I would love to. When you have over, I think this semester I had around 200 students, that's all I'd be doing day and night. Because if I said,
Just
hey guys, I will
tailoring.
individualize stuff for you, I would have 10 of them at my door right now saying, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
You know, what would you like to do
You're
for me?
a personal trainer now.
Yes, and I did personal training for over, 15 years.
Did you really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I was a personal trainer, Columbia, Greenville, Atlanta.
Now, another friend of mine, he lives out in California. He did personal trainings in a different field now, but what he experienced, and he got very frustrated with it, especially being in South Carolina where people's health is not their number one priority. Cheeseburgers are many times. Did you experience a disconnect between your desire to help this person and their own desire to grow?
Oh, of course. If you're a personal trainer for any amount of time that's worth his weight in gold, you're definitely going to experience that. Now, if you don't care and you're just more or less, hey, I'm trying to get money, blah, 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 which personal training is not the field to go into to make riches at all.
And I thought it was at one time. I thought that's what I wanted to do when I was in high school. But I got out and took a different career path, and I tried to do it. This is actually how I met my buddy Sean that I'm talking about. And that he very quickly told me, like, dude, you don't want to do this. Stick to sales. There's money there,
Well, and see, that's the thing is personal training is also a sales job as well. I have to convince this client to, hey, let's buy not 1 session, let's buy 20 sessions.
Yeah.
That's
one session is not going to do anything for them.
No, not at all. Not at all. But that's where I started getting burned out because I was like, a lot of the gyms that I was in, and I was in some very good ones, I was in some very shabby ones. A lot of the gyms I was in, okay, you've got to sell them. If you want to make money for your own life, you've got to sell them to buy, here's 100 sessions for, $75 or not $75. But in other words, that was the way it usually went. And that was always frustrating to me. I'm not a salesman. I've never claimed to be one. I'm not even sure I could sell water to a man in a desert. I mean, he'd be like, "Yeah, well, you're not really convincing me of this."
Like he wanted the water until you started talking to
Yeah,
him.
as
Now
soon
he's
as
like,
I
I'm just
started
gonna
talking
die.
to him, he's like,
I'm
"You
just
know
gonna-
what? I think I'm just gonna go walk away." That's cool, man.
Well, sales does have like this sleazy used car salesman vibe. Like that's what most people think of when they think of the term sales. You know?
Well, when the always thing is when somebody's basing their income off of commission,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna tell me, even if they are telling me the truth and they're not that type, they're gonna tell me what I want to hear just so they can get that sale.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But you know what? There's a place for those people. I am totally down with I go buy cell phones. I have to do that, and they have to sell it on me.
Yeah, I mean the economy doesn't move without someone
Sure.
to sell products. I mean, I'm sure us living in a highly consumer based society, people are seeking things to buy. So it's probably
Sure.
easier here than it would be in another country.
But that was not my calling. God did not say Josh Cook is going to be the salesman.
So speaking about your calling, do you feel like a big part of your life is fitness, nutrition, and learning about how to grow in that way? Do you feel like that is your calling, and do you have aspirations to teach at a higher level as you ascend through jiu-jitsu, through not personal training, through strength and conditioning?
Honestly, no.
No.
I know that sounds horrible, and
No.
but it was one of those things where it was good for the time that I used it. Did strength conditioning with athletes, all of that kind of stuff. Even here at Lander, I did some strength conditioning with athletes. But it was one of those where I was like, okay, especially personal training. And I just use an example. I said, if I have to personal train one more person, there's going to be some mass shootings at some point.
And why is that?
When you focus on, I took something that was a hobby and a love for me, and I said, let me make a career out of this. I went to school for it. I never changed my major. I went through certifications for it. It was all I focused on for probably, I'm 39, probably about 20 years of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
started personal training actually when I was beginning about 18. And I did it all the way up until, I want to say 2010, 2011, maybe.
So right before we met.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was even doing a little bit. I was doing strength conditioning when I was teaching high school and middle school and stuff. And I had gotten to the point I was like, I don't want to talk about another nutritional. You can ask my wife. I won't even personal train her. She's like, why don't you take me?
Well, that's
and I will not do it.
I don't know if that's a good idea for most husbands to try that anyway.
Well, I would. I'm a pretty laid back guy, especially my wife is very laid back, and I think I totally could do it with my wife. But I just don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to talk about it. I struggle sometimes to even get myself to work out. I'm just like, do I really want to do this today?
Well, I think that's common.
Which I think that's everybody.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because you hear so much that you should take your passion and make it your career. That's one of the keys to success. But it sounds like that made you get a distaste for what was previously your passion.
It took me in a direction that I was just not willing to go. I didn't want to commit the rest of my life to it.
Right.
I don't mind talking about it a little bit, but in other words, I have other passions that I would rather totally talk about.
Well, let's talk about those.
Fitness.
So what's something that you would like to delve into?
Well, I mean, jiu-jitsu for me is besides God and my family's life.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is life for me. I work so I can go to jiu-jitsu.
You live for jiu-jitsu.
I live for jiu-jitsu, and I've been doing it now. And somebody would say, well, that sounds like the same thing you did with fitness. True. And I've thought about it myself. I had to have, one of those points to where I was kind of like, okay, am I doing the same thing with jiu-jitsu that I do with fitness?
Mm-hmm.
But jiu-jitsu changes your whole life.
Yes.
It was like when, I had my, my Christian conversion. It changes. It becomes so grounded and rooted in who you are that you don't even know. You're like, I can't not do this. It's not even like I'm trying to do it. I'm still doing it.
It's such a multi-layered internal game of chess. Essentially, is what you're doing. It's human chess, but a lot of that you're not facing the opponent. You're facing yourself.
True.
So it's I've always gravitated more toward sports like that. I ran track, cross country in high school because growing up, I played baseball and basketball and soccer, and I somehow always ended up being on the team that lost. Like I was always on the team that was the worst, and I felt like I was pretty decent at sports. And track and cross country, it didn't matter if my team was horrible.
thankfully, I had some really great guys that I ran with on the distance team. But I could win. If everyone else didn't do well, I could still win, and I could taste that victory. And that's what jiu-jitsu was for me as well, aside from the fact that you need to know how to defend yourself.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
So what was your first experience with jiu-jitsu?
Well, my first experience actually was pretty funny. I was teaching in a high school around here.
You wrestled before, right?
Yeah. If you can call it that. But I was teaching in a high school around here. Now let's see, during that time I was about 30. Well, yeah, I was probably about 30. And so a lot of the guys, I was coaching football, and a lot of guys are like, okay, I had another teacher come to me, and he was like, you know what, some of these guys don't want to play basketball, but they don't want to just have downtime until football season again. He was like, why don't we start a wrestling club? I was like, well, first off, I'd never even, if I watched a wrestling match, maybe one my whole life up until 30, I didn't know anything about it. And I was like, I'll help you out. Why not? I mean, I don't know anything about it. You know a little bit about it. We can probably get this thing going.
And you could learn while you're there.
Yeah, doing AAU stuff. So in other words, you kind of sign up, become a club. So we started, and I started watching YouTube videos. Now, I had been watching the UFC before that. You know, I didn't know much about jiu-jitsu. I was like, oh, man, I remember watching old Hoist Gracie. I would go to Blockbuster, and they would always have it in that section, like where, you know, not so much Blockbuster didn't have porn, but you would have that, these are really shady movies.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to pop up.
It's not the
in.
back room. Now, it's
Yeah.
not the back room where you have to go. You know, there was always that room where you had the key, and you're like, oh, that's where dirty people
And you
go.
don't want people to see you go in there.
Yeah, no. And if you got that door open a little bit, you're like, oh, man, look. Oh, man, I didn't know they could do that. But anyway,
Scarred.
so it's kind of like there, but then you had the UFC at the bottom. And I remember getting that. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but it says no rules. I definitely got to watch this. And I'm in there, and I am eating it up. I'm sitting there watching, and I couldn't stand Hoist Gracie.
Guys getting their teeth kicked
Dude,
out.
I couldn't stand Hoist Gracie. The minute I saw him,
Really?
I was like, who is this guy in this white gi? And I love
He's in his bathrobe. What is he doing?
I love this Ken Shamrock cat, dude.
Yeah,
I
because
was-
Ken
I was-
Shamrock's
I
like
was
this
ripped,
beastie,
shredded.
shredded,
Yeah.
all-American looking guy.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm like, this is so... And my mom's so suspect about it. She's like, I don't know about this no rules stuff you're watching here, but I'm like, watch this.
Is this legal?
And I'm calling my dad in there. I'm like, watch him kick this guy. Dude, there goes his tooth. Look at it. And, man, I'm loving it. But then I see this little guy, and he chokes out Ken Shamrock. And I was like, well, okay. I didn't think anything about it. I was like, I don't give a crap what that guy knows. The second time they fight, it's going to be different. So
He's
I
gonna
finally,
overpower.
Blockbuster, you know, gets them like every 6 months. So the second one came out, and Ken Shamrock and Hoist Gracie are the super fight. And I remember thinking it was such a victory. They went for like, I don't remember how long.
Well, that was a harder
long
fight for
match.
him. Yeah, that was a...
Yeah, and they ended up going a draw. It was, I can't remember, because that was when time limit wasn't there.
What was the fight? It was a Manuel Yarborough, I think, and Keith Hackney, where
That
the
was the
big,
one where
like,
the tooth,
500...
the tooth went flying. Yeah, the sumo wrestler versus that.
Yeah, he was like 500-pound guy
Yeah,
versus
country
this-
boy, white boy with his
Yeah.
karate pants on, and he kicked him in the freaking mouth. Yeah. And that tooth, you watch it now, and you see that tooth go flying. Yeah, man, those are the days, man. That was so much fun. And I remember watching Hoist Gracie versus Chemo, and he's holding his freaking ponytail and beat. And I hated Hoist. I mean, for years, I hated Hoist. I was like, dude, you cannot do this to people. Because I thought for sure Chemo would be like taking him down, bringing the cross to the, you know, he carried that cross to the cage. Remember, he's like dragging him. I just thought Chemo was the stuff.
Yeah, it was a very almost like pro wrestling kind of vibe to it. Well, that's also why the UFC struggled to grow for a while, because it was, I think John McCain called it human cockfighting, and it essentially was, you know, that's what it was. So it had to evolve into more of the art, you know, the martial arts aspect, where you bring in these
Very
themes of
much so.
dignity and honor, which, you know, we still have like a very pro wrestling vibe when you look at guys like Conor McGregor. But it's a slightly different taste to it, because, you know, there are rules when they get in there. They can't just kill each other.
And they realize, you know, they're doing it just, you know, they've got to hype it up to
They
make
got to
money.
sell it.
Yeah, they're salesmen, of course. But anyway, so that didn't make, once again, still didn't make an impression where I was like, I got to learn jiu-jitsu. So at 30, anyway, so we're back to wrestling. I'm barely knowing how to wrestle. I don't know what double legs are. I don't know what single legs are. Well, I'm going to the YMCA, where a friend of mine is a coach for youth wrestling. I'm taking youth wrestling classes.
Well, some of the guys we train with now, they were doing judo there, right? Chad,
yeah, they
Chad
were.
was
They
there.
were. So it was probably around the same time. We were all doing that kind of stuff. Yeah, Dale was judo, so he knew about jiu-jitsu, all of that kind of stuff.
Dale's a beast.
A monster. But, you know, so I'm learning all this stuff, and I'm like, man, I really like wrestling. and I'm getting hurt. I'm 30, and I'm, wrestling with guys that are 17, 18. I'm tearing abdominals. I remember laying on my ex-wife's floor of her salon, and I'm like laying there, and I'm like, we got to go to the hospital.
You've got like separated rib cage.
Dude, I thought I broke ribs. I've
I've
ribs,
had that too.
and I was like, we got to go to the hospital. And I remember, and it still hurts even today. Every now and then, it'll like somebody if I get gator rolled or something, I'm like, oh man, I remember that. But so I'm like, that's cool. So every school I went to, I tried to do wrestling, even with the youth, man, I fell in love with wrestling, and I still love wrestling, love it. But I realized eventually, I said, my body can't take this beating for too long. I was wrestling. So in 2008, I actually took on Jiu-Jitsu right here in town. And I remember my first practice was in a small garage. Me, one other guy, and then the instructor then was Jay Phillips. And Jay was like not even a blue belt yet. And
he's a brown belt now, right?
Yeah, about to be black.
Wow.
But I remember that, and I remember just loving it, just fell in love. But I wouldn't do the gi at first. I was like, nah, I'm not putting that thing on. Nah, I just want to do no gi. Just no.
It's like
gi.
you're in a spider web,
I just didn't know what a gi totally was.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, I'm like, that looks a lot more technical. I can still use my wrestling with no gi.
You can't slip out of things as easily.
With the gi, somebody's holding on to me and all that. But in 2008, man, that's where it got started. I remember I didn't mind training pretty much. It'd be a garage. We had a house that was built had wrestling mats on the wall. Especially when Carolina Combat first got started, man, we have to go out to Weir Shoals.
Yeah, they still don't even have air conditioning in that place. It's too big.
Well, they've changed from the house now.
Right.
Coach Perkle took an old house in the back of his lot and put wrestling mats up on the wall and had them on the floor. Yeah.
Yeah, my first time I trained was actually no mats at all. My uncle had been training, and he was showing my brother and my ex-wife's cousin some moves, and been training with them for like 2 weeks, and my younger brother. So I go in there thinking like, oh, I'm gonna be fine, and they just utterly dominated me with 2 weeks of training. And we did it on hardwood floor. So like the next day, my knees are like big, huge, swollen pumpkins. Yes. It was no fun. But it's something that kind of grabs a hold of you. So what was the first tournament you did?
Oh, I did a month after I started. I did a Naga and got choked out with a rear naked choke in all of about 20 seconds.
North American Grappling Association.
Yes, and I had paid $100 to do this thing.
$100 to get choked out
in 15 seconds, and they don't do like consolation brackets. That was the end of my day because I didn't do gi yet, so I didn't know about doing more. That was the end of my day, and I drove to Atlanta for this, and I had power bars. I was like, man, I'm going to be going all day here. I thought I was going to go in there and just wipe the mat. And pretty much
you did, but you're the one that got.
I cleaned the mats.
They used you to wipe the mats.
Pretty much.
Now, I kind of want to talk about this, and I know you said you're an open book, but I understand if you don't really want to go in this direction. But I'm interested because I know you face some incredibly unique challenges as a parent. You have a unique situation with your son. If you want to kind of like cover some of that.
No, that's perfectly fine. No.
Because I think there are a lot of people that would vibe with that.
Sure.
They're in a similar situation and they feel the struggle of it. Because I have no clue what that's like.
It's definitely a challenge. I've got two boys. I've got a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old, and my youngest has a rare chromosome disorder. It's called Isodicentric 15q duplication. Quinn has an extra chromosome on his 15th chromosome. You can have a duplication and you can also have a deletion. So in other words, there's one less than what needs to be there. He has an extra one. So he's kind of like an X-Man. He's kind of a mutant. That's what I always call him. I'm like, I just know these powers are going to show up one of the days. I just know a power is going to show up. He's going to disappear and then reappear in the kitchen. I said, or either go Wolverine style, have a huge healing factor.
He could just manifest loads of money.
Yes, something like that. I just know it's going to happen. It's just puberty hadn't hit yet. Puberty happens, we're all good.
That's when it matures.
Super strong, turn into, whatever. But anyway, so it causes him to have physical delays. So in other words, like he's 6 and he still hadn't walked yet. Developmental delays as far as he's on the autism spectrum, but he's even actually he's been diagnosed with cerebral palsy. He's been diagnosed with, he has intellectual delays. So in other words, 6, he still hadn't said his first word yet. He does learn, but it's at a much, much slower capacity. the way we were always told, the easiest way to describe it is he may be sick in his body, but he's probably about a year in his development. And so it's one of those things, and it's very, very rare. So they are finding more cases of it now, but there's still not a set. He has seizures. He has myoclonic seizures, which is seizures that can last up to 2 to 3 minutes.
Oh wow!
And are they violent seizures where he?
No, it's kind of like he's even aware. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just tremoring, but he can't really. He moves a little bit, but it's slow. But he's really shaking.
Now, are those damaging to him having the seizures?
Supposedly
if they're mild
not.
like that?
Supposedly not. He's only had 2. I think it was 2 or 3, maybe grand mal seizures. I think it's 2 right
What
now.
is it? What'd you say?
A grand mal seizure
Grand
is
mal?
a very serious where they are not conscious.
Where they've taught you to like put a spoon in someone's mouth.
Yes, I have to make sure his tongue doesn't roll back. He has to get actually a very strong medication rectally to actually put him to sleep. We are very blessed.
And you would have to administer that in the
I do.
midst of the seizure?
I do.
Wow.
I actually give him to him myself. Call the ambulance. We have to have him. One time we had to have him flown down to Charleston.
Wow.
So they had to put him, asleep to be able to fly down there. Those are very, very serious, and we are blessed to only have 2. We know some of the kids that have this that have them regularly,
Like weekly or monthly.
some of the kids with the myoclonic seizures, the short ones, will have up to 100, 150 a day.
Wow.
They can't even function.
So they're just having seizures all the time.
Pretty much.
Wow.
Ours have been controlled with medication, lots of prayer. I mean, I don't ever take away from that. And Quinn's one of the ones that are pretty good. He functions well. He does go to school.
I mean, I can see that he's interactive. I mean, he definitely gravitates toward people.
Sure,
and I
sure.
know I'm completely ignorant of this condition, but
Sure, and he does learn. He understands words. He does communicate, of course, in his own way.
Yeah.
He can learn
Mhm.
some sign language. But it's very much like having a big baby.
Mhm.
Still, wears a diaper, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, that's been a challenge, and it's changed me in good ways. It's changed me in bad ways at times. It's caused me to have a lot more patience, but
Mhm.
also you just have those breaking
It's
points
got to be
in
very
time.
stressful. Do
Yeah.
you feel like it's made you more compassionate, more empathetic?
Very much so. Very, very much so. Especially to other children that are different.
Mm.
Even other people that are different. Because you just never know. You never know what somebody's going through at home. I make mine very public. In other words, Quinn pretty much goes with me everywhere I go.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, it's because of physically, I'm really the only person that's around him physically that can, if he needs to be picked up from somewhere. I mean, Quinn's 83 pounds.
Right. Yeah.
My wife
It's be hard for
is
Tabitha to-
about
Yeah.
115 pounds. So, that's like taking her and picking herself up.
Yeah.
My mom and dad are older. So,
But also, to an extent, I would imagine you feel like this really deep level of responsibility, like he's your son. You want to be the one there.
we've just been through everything together.
Yeah.
I remember the years and years, his first 2 or 3 years, he hardly ever slept at night.
Just cried a lot.
Just couldn't go.
Just
Part of the disorder is they can't go into REM sleep hardly at all. It's very hard for them to. So they're very restless. They can wake up at the drop of a hat usually. As he's gotten older, it's gotten better. Thank God for that, because I'm glad.
'Cause you
to
need your sleep.
Yeah, the first couple of years, man, it was torture. I mean, how many times I broke down and cried at freaking 2 a.m. because I'm like, just a little bit of sleep, bro, just a little bit of sleep. And he wanted it too. He was like, man, I'm worn
He
out,
can't
but
do
I
it.
can't seem to go to sleep. Yeah,
Now, how does this affect him long term as he gets older into his teens
there's no,
and his?
they don't know.
There's no baseline. For
No, there's no bad.
understanding of
Each
it.
one of them, literally, if I put a room of 100 kids with this disorder, they would all be different.
Wow.
Some of them would talk, some of them would walk, some of them would hold jobs.
To an extent, it's
To an
almost like
extent.
he has his own condition
Very much
in a
so.
way.
They have to take, each one of them are on different, most of them are on seizure medicine because seizure seems to be something that comes along with it. But they're all on different seizure medicines. This one reacts to this one. This one reacts to this one. This one reacts to. And it's almost like once you find the cocktail that works, you're like, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it. As he's gotten older, we've had to up the dosage, all of that kind of, because he's getting heavier.
Right.
So it's just, every day is you try to, and this can be very frustrating for people in your life. My wife is amazing and patient and all this, but your day almost is exactly the same every day. Because if you keep it on a schedule, it just works out really, really well. I used to not take trips at all. I wouldn't even get in the car.
So he doesn't deal very well with variations and
He
changes
does,
his
like
schedule.
I said,
or it's probably challenging for you
better,
too.
But in the car, you could be having a great trip, and then all of a sudden, he just changes a little bit, and then you could be having a terrible trip. It's just kind of like you have to be willing to adapt at the drop of a hat. Yeah. I'd gotten to the point where, especially going back to jiu-jitsu, I was kind of like, okay, I'd have somebody keep him, I'd have somebody keep him, I'd have somebody keep him. And then I realized, I was like, well, it's taking a toll on them now. It's kind of like, they're not as available. If I want to go to practice. So eventually I got to the point, I said, you know what, go to practice. Quinn probably has had more mat time than a ton of our white belts.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe even our blue belts. Quinn should have his own belt now. But he goes to practice. He, I'm just, I just, there is a level of responsibility. You're just like, which is also, catch-22, because there's some people that do want to help you, and you're just like, no, I got it.
Right.
It would take me longer to get you to help
teach them what to do,
and that's horrible.
Or they do
I should
it wrong.
never be like that, because you do need with a
That's
child,
the
special needs child. It's a family that has.
Yeah,
to
I mean,
help.
even with a child that's not a special needs child, it's so much. It's amazing to me that you're so laid back and so collected about it, because I feel like for myself it would just drive me crazy. I don't know, but I guess you
see me right now.
Yeah.
If you talk to my wife and stuff, she's like, he is wonderful with it, but then there's those times I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to take my head, just put it through this.
You
wall
have to
right
reach
here.
that breaking point, I would imagine. What were your thoughts when you first discovered that he had this condition, and was it known before he was born?
No, actually, and this is now, Quinn is with my ex-wife, not my wife now, but my ex-wife, she noticed it first. He had been born, it was actually funny, I can tell you the weekend that we actually started thinking something was different. She actually brought it up to me. It was July 4th weekend of, let's see, he was born in 2010, actually it was probably, he was born May 27th. She probably said something, around
So about
July 4th,
about 2 months.
2 months later,
About 2 months old.
My cousin had twins, and they were visiting us. I remember the weekend exactly, because it was actually the weekend, I believe, that Brock Lesnar won his heavyweight title.
You're just
he defended his title from Shane Carwin. Yeah, that's how I based it. Because we loved Brock Lesnar. Not so much for the wrestling part, but we loved him in MMA. We thought he was awesome. But anyway, I remember us watching that weekend, and my cousin's visiting, and he just had twins. His twins are the same age twins. And they were crying all night long, and we were just like, man, I'm so glad Quinn's so good. We're just thinking about it.
He's
We're like,
just so chill.
man, he's so chill, laid back, and I love it. And their twins are just going off. And I remember them getting up, going, they were like, I don't think we're going to visit anymore. We want to stay home. And I'm like, I don't blame you. But that weekend, she said, something just seems off about him. Something seems off. And, I was of course, I was like, no, he's good. He's going to be fine. He's all that. But as the months progressed, we noticed he wasn't crawling.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't make eye contact with you. If you're talking to him, he's like everywhere but there. And so finally, and we went to the pediatrician about it, and she's like, yeah, something seems off. So we went to the genetic center here and got him tested. And I remember the day. I don't remember exactly the date, but I remember them bringing us there. They called us, and I remember Christy saying, the genetic center wants to meet with us. And I was like,
who wanted to meet with you?
Genetic center.
The genetic center.
Yeah, we have an awesome genetic center. Greenwood Genetic Center is
Yeah.
awesome here. And I remember them, they said they want to meet with us. And I'm like, okay, I don't even know what that even means, but okay, cool, no problem. I wasn't liking that we were having to go get him genetically tested. I was like, well, they're not going to find anything. It's going to be fine. I didn't even know what they could find. I was like, he doesn't have Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what else there was out there. But anyway, so.
And autism, is that a genetic?
Autism is a really, really, really big word. There can
It's
be-
broad. It covers a
It's a
ton.
very broad thing. And when you say, autism, it's kind of like saying somebody has ADHD. It's a broad term. They could think you and I have ADHD if we, kind of are a little hyper or something like that.
Just if we had too much coffee.
Yeah. So autism is one of those too. That's kind of like, this is a huge term.
And people operate on a different, or they live at different levels on the spectrum. I know.
Sure.
I know. Even with Down syndrome, the thought is usually someone that has Down syndrome, they're like not. Traditionally, they're viewed as not a benefit to society, but that's not really true. There are a lot of people with Down syndrome that hold jobs,
Very
hold
well.
down relationships, and are very capable of doing same things you and I are.
Sure, their function. Well, the way they say it is functioning,
Mhm.
and you have high level, you have low level, and that's the way with Quinn's disorder, stuff like that. You have high level, high functioning, low functioning, all that kind of stuff. So, but I remember when they came in and they tried to explain it to us, and I was like, "What? He's got what? How's this?"
And they
gonna
hit you
affect
with
me?"
what was the terminology you used?
Isodicentric 15.
Yes, yeah.
Duplication or deletion, and I was like, "Okay, I don't even know what this is."
Yeah, what
Because
is
they
it?
didn't really know. It's very rare. So the doctor comes in and he's kind of explaining it to us, but he didn't even really know how to explain it. He's just like, "Okay, this is what could happen." Blah 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 blah. And I'm wanting to know, does that mean he's going to die in a year? Does that mean he's like, no. That a lot of them live full lives and all that kind of stuff. And
Well, that's great because I was wondering, that was part of my question without blatantly saying it, is how it would affect him as he gets older.
some of them do have complications. They can't tell me if he's going to or not.
Right.
So far, he's very healthy, very, lungs work good. Everything that would cause him not to be able to function properly seems to be working fine.
So this can have an effect on some of the vital life functions.
You know what actually has a lot of the effects is a lot of the medicine they have to take.
Oh, so
We have
that's
to have his
damaging to his body.
liver tested and all that kind of stuff because of the medicine he takes, which is very, very frustrating, especially now that, we're trying to get, one of the things that could benefit him is medical marijuana.
Right.
For seizures,
Cannabinol
all
oil.
of that, CBD oil, all of that kind of stuff that we're struggling to get past right now.
Now, so the difference between you have more knowledge about CBD oil and the psychoactive medical marijuana, so both could actually benefit him potentially. So
The CBD oil is
not
what they're
psychoactive.
saying is more, at this moment, effective for the seizures.
And it's not psychoactive. It doesn't.
No,
make
the
him
THC
high
is not, or either very, very, very low levels of it. So in other words, if I gave it to Quinn, he's not getting high. But it's the studies so far are showing there's benefits to it. Once again, there's not a lot of long term, but right now, a lot of the kids that do have the seizures that are taking the CBD oil are having wonderful results.
Yeah, and I've
It's
heard a lot of.
extremely frustrating to see how it's just being hammered, not passed. The medical marijuana, which is very beneficial for a lot of different things, needs to be passed ASAP.
It seems like there's two differing things. There's almost like this one element which is tied to morality and this old school view that anything that you ingest that alters your mood or alters your state is bad, while at the same time hypocritically, maybe this person who holds that viewpoint having a prescription to Xanax or something like that. And then there seems to be a concerted effort from some element of whether it's the pharmacy companies or politicians who are paid by them. It seems like there's those two elements of society that are holding this back. And, obviously it's loosened up over the years, but what do you think it would take as far as advocacy or someone speaking up about how it specifically helps kids or even, I guess, adults as well with seizures? What do you think it would take to actually move this forward?
Well, I mean, like you said, it is first off, Big Pharma is definitely keeping things locked down. When you've got Big Pharma with the type of money that they have, they can keep a lot of rules into play, federal government rules into play that, until it benefits them.
Right. And that's what's frustrating to see, because I would imagine there are probably some people who are in that industry who may be in a situation similar to you with a child who is affected by this. And, it's interesting to see how someone shifts their viewpoint on something when it comes to affect their own personal life.
Sure. It was funny because even my mom, which she was raised in the South and raised by God-fearing, a mother who, all of that kind of stuff. But when it comes to when we talk about Quinn and his seizures, you know what? Hey,
She's
I'm
open.
open.
She's open to what, because she loves him and she wants what's best for him.
She's
and
open,
you.
and we are, JK. No matter what we say, we are raised in the Bible Belt.
Yes.
And to see marijuana was the devil's, the devil's playground,
the devil weed,
yeah, man. And so,
well, it's certainly something that people do abuse, and I think that's where it gets tied to these other drugs. These incredibly harmful things like cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, things like that. And it doesn't seem like that someone who uses this, especially for medical purposes, it doesn't necessarily mean they're more likely to use these others. But what people see is that people that tend to use these harder drugs, they also use marijuana, and that taints the conversation, I think.
Well, when you've got marijuana as a Schedule 1, that means there's no benefit or anything, and it's up there with heroin. It's up there with cocaine, which I think a lot of those are Schedule 2. Then you've got a real problem. Even now, and I was one of those same people that was kind of like, oh man, marijuana will lead you into this, and all that. And now we're finding out all the benefits of psychedelics. Mm-hmm. We're finding the benefits to marijuana, of course, and it's opened my mind a little bit and said, you know what?
Perhaps some of these things I was taught were not.
This can't affect me worse than a pharmaceutical does.
And certainly no more than alcohol. It's far less than alcohol.
Oh, much less than alcohol. And, and all of this stuff is still legal. I don't think my wife would mind me telling this, but her mom had a problem with prescription pills.
A lot of people do.
And so, that shows you right there that there's more of an issue with stuff that I can go to Walgreens and get.
I think there are a lot more people that have had issues, whether it's a small issue or a large issue with prescription pills than people realize, because it's so easy to get. If you have, like currently I have a knee injury. I need to have it looked out, but if I had a ton of pain, I can easily get pain medication for it. And if you're on that stuff, it's highly addictive. You're on it for 2 or 3 weeks, you come off of that stuff, you're wanting it. And it's so readily available and so easy to get. And it's swept under the rug because of this legality, which people somehow equate legality with the right thing. So I mean, at some point,
morality and legality are put together so many times.
Exactly. I mean, slavery was legal at some point, and people tied that to morality as if that was an okay thing to do. So it's just very interesting to see how we have these structures built up in society and in our minds toward these different concepts, and it's almost like people actively try to hold that back. They think status quo, tradition, is always the best thing to maintain. When many times it's harmful.
Sure. Anytime that you're in a tradition to the point that you're not willing to open yourself up to see different options, you've got a problem.
Right.
A closed-mindedness is definitely, and you know what? Before I had Quinn, I'm sure towards special needs and towards differences and all that kind of, I was probably closed-minded, very much closed-minded. You always feel especially special needs, and I think the most thing I was ever exposed to was Down syndrome.
Yeah.
It's usually easily identifiable, usually, and it was kind of one of those things. You're just like, oh, I feel so sorry for that person. I feel so sorry for that person. But it does until it affects you personally. It's so
you're just
easy
ignorant of it. You have no close contact with it, and that's why I wanted to talk about it, because it's something that I have not had close contact with. There's no one in my family that's affected by any of these kinds of disorders, so it's interesting to me. The only time I really had interaction on a regular basis was in middle school. There was a kid who had Down syndrome, and he wasn't really picked on a whole lot, but he was picked on some. So it was kind of interesting to me to see other kids doing that when he obviously had a condition that he couldn't help. But at the same time, he was I guess, with me being ignorant of the spectrum from high functioning and low functioning, he seemed like he was kind of in the middle, right there. So, what do you think? Like, what is the difference? This is kind of going in a different direction now, but what is the difference between the duplication of the chromosome and the deletion? Or do you even know?
I'll be honest with you, I don't really know. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've looked. We had what we called a Quinn packet that we would take everywhere. So we had, anytime you would go somewhere, we had what his disorder is, what
Oh,
medicine
to like
you take.
explain to other people.
Almost like an encyclopedia of Quinn. I'm like, here, if you want to know about Quinn, just read this.
Just read it.
I
And
haven't
now they
seen-
can listen to the podcast.
Yeah, I haven't read that in a long time, so I don't know what if he had a deletion, what he would have so much as far as what issues or anything like that. I just know about the duplication.
Right.
Um,
And even that's so murky.
that's still very murky. You know, in other words, like one day he literally could pop up and start talking. You're like, hey, yesterday you just weren't talking, but today you're talking.
So it's a possibility that he could just reach some state of normalcy.
To a point.
Mhm.
You know, it'll be a lot more normal than maybe like right now.
I would imagine that would be a great.
But
feeling.
like even with walking and stuff like that, it's not going to be one day he pops up and does it. He has what they call hypotonia, which is very low muscle strength.
Well, if he were to gain that capability, he'd have to build it up anyway.
You have to build it up, but what it is almost like if I move my arm right now, the creatine's helping move it and all that kind of stuff, which is giving the ATP to be able to help to.
And what is
strength.
ATP?
Adenosine triphosphate, which
Okay.
is kind of like your.
So it's
it's kind of like your short-term energy.
okay.
So you work like when I'm doing bench press and I start getting that fatigue and all that, I'm depleting my ATP. Quinn doesn't produce it as fast, so he couldn't. Even if he stood up, it's not going to be but a second or two. You can supplement it with creatine and all that kind of stuff, but even then, it builds up. Like with creatine, if you take creatine right now, you'll build up a tolerance to it. We produce creatine in our body, but we only produce small amounts. So when you start supplementing, you're upping it. Even with creatine, you have to be careful at times because your body will actually slow down its production.
That's
If
what I was.
If you're
that was my next
supplementing
question.
it, if you're supplementing it, you have to be careful. That's why cycling on and off of creatine. These people that take it just for months and months and months and months and years, you're not even helping yourself any longer. You're not even getting the benefit of it. You have to cycle on and off of that even so much.
A lot of people equate that with steroids. I recall being a teenager and I was taking a little bit, and I was so ignorant of it. I mean, I was making protein shakes with chocolate ice cream and raw eggs and putting creatine powder in it. And a lot of people equate those with steroids.
Oh,
but
I wouldn't take it for years. I was like, I'm not using performance enhancing drugs.
But you do. You know, that's the crazy thing is, you know, we have this specific idea of what is the right substances we can take. And what is the wrong substance and what is acceptable? Coffee, sugar, excess sodium.
Those are
all
performance
that.
enhancing drugs.
They are absolutely,
Yeah, they are.
and they're perfectly okay to take because we've seen McDonald's commercials our whole life, and we've had Coca-Cola and Dr. Pepper shoved in our face our whole life. That it's like, oh, that's just what we do as Americans.
But then we'll suspend a UFC fighter because he smoked some weed like 3 or 4 weeks. Not even during the fight. 3 or 4 weeks.
And I can't
beforehand.
imagine that would help you in a fight. Like if you were high,
I would.
I can't imagine that would. You just fall like, I'm gonna lay down and take a nap.
From my experience, I'm not sure I could eat a sandwich if I was like that. So
I'm sure you could eat like 12 sandwiches.
well, that would be probably as I'm coming down a little bit. But during the time, I'm not sure I could do so. I couldn't see like Nick Diaz being totally baked out of his mind and saying, "I'm going to go fight somebody." He might can. Now the Diaz brothers are freaks, but
well, they have like this. They also do triathlons and stuff. So Nick, if you're listening, Nate Diaz, they're these incredibly accomplished mixed martial artists. They fought at the highest level, and they are just not only great fighters, but they have this really incredible pace and stamina because they do these triathlons.
They're those freaks. But I mean, I couldn't even think about doing. I'm a big fan of Eddie Bravo and all these guys, these jiu-jitsu guys that really believe in smoking weed and all that. Yeah. I'm like, I don't even know how you could even function.
No.
And even Professor Miller from last week said he did it once and tried to roll, and he said, I just remember laying there. He said, but I thought I was doing some awesome stuff, and I was like, no. So I'm not one of those guys. I probably need it, but I'm not one of those guys. But as far as with Quinn and stuff, every day's an adventure. This is the way I look at it. Every day's an adventure. Even though we do try to keep things the same, he's just become such a part of my life, my wife's life, his brother's life, that it's just normal life.
It sounds like he's one of your greatest teachers in a way.
He's definitely, and once again, I believe in God. I believe in all of that kind of stuff. I asked God, and I haven't got an answer yet, but I asked God, I said, why me? I have little patience. I really am
There's your answer right there.
very selfish myself.
There's your answer.
And I said, but why me of all people? I said, my wife would even be better at this. I said, if you gave her, in other words, and she does have him now, but if she would have birthed this child, she would have done better. I said, why me of all people? And it has, it makes me more aware of who I am.
Yeah. Well, that's an undervalued skill, self-awareness, or if you want to call it a skill, but it's an undervalued quality. Many people don't have self-awareness. And I feel like I'm attracted to people who are. Like, you're very self-aware. Professor Miller is very self-aware. A lot of the people in my life are. Like, it's just not as common and incredibly valuable to have that self-awareness.
To me, self-awareness is somebody who's self-aware definitely has something outside of themselves that they live for. Me, it's Quinn. It's jiu-jitsu, it's my family, and they all tie in together. That's what's the craziest thing about this whole journey, is every bit of that stuff ties in together.
You start to see
one affects the other, and it affects the next part, and it affects the next part.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see your life without it. I guess if you say as far as jiu-jitsu, am I at a point that I will get a black belt? Yeah, I'm a brown belt. If I don't get a black belt, first off, I'm gonna cry for a very
you would
long
be in this
time.
Yeah, you're pretty.
But
much.
When you get to a certain level, and as far as belt level, you're in a very small echelon of people.
You get past that blue belt level.
I think it's purple now because jiu-jitsu is so widespread now. I think they said it's if you get to purple.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you get past blue belt, if you get to purple,
you're probably going to stick it out to black. But I know they say once you definitely get to brown, it's very few at brown.
Right.
And even a select, even though it seems like everybody's got a black belt now, but
it's very well. I mean, if you what would you think would be the percentage of population?
Oh God,
it would have
less
to be
than 1%.
Oh, definitely. I mean, way less.
It probably even more.
Maybe even less than maybe even 1% of people who train jiu-jitsu.
1% of 1%.
It could even be that.
Well, it's one of those. It's not a quick one.
No.
God, I've been doing it now since 2008.
Yeah.
And it's not one of those you go one day a week either. You usually are averaging. Now, if you do one day a week is better than nothing at all.
Yeah, I used to train now, with this injury, I'm not training at all, but I used to train. I've been training for about 7 years.
But that's normal. You have those times where guys will take a little time off or do something like that. That's actually normal. I've taken it, done it myself. But you always end up going back. And it's one of those things that becomes so ingrained in who you are that you don't know a day if you take a day off, and I've gotten much better about this. You can ask my wife. I used to take a day off, and I'd be like, let's just stop by the gym. I just want to see what they're doing.
I just want to walk in there.
I just want to smell it. Can I smell it?
I smell the sweaty man stench.
It got to the point I was kind of like, okay, and I had to pray about this. It was bad.
Jiu-jitsu
I was like, okay,
junkie.
if I take a day off, Lord, just help me to be relaxed. Help me to be like, yeah, it's totally cool and all that. And I've gotten so much better about it. I can't actually be relaxed with my wife because my wife can tell when I'm just like, rather be there.
It's therapeutic, man. It really is. It's one of those things, and like you said about it, everything does tie together in life, and I think self-awareness is realizing that. Like you said, realizing everything is tied together, but jiu-jitsu helps facilitate and cultivate that self-awareness and helps you see. There was a time in my life where jiu-jitsu was the cornerstone. Jiu-jitsu was that one thing out of all of the chaos, all of the crazy things going on in my life. Jiu-jitsu was the only thing that was stable. And as you know, jiu-jitsu is incredibly chaotic. You're on the mat, someone's trying to choke you unconscious or break your arm, but through that chaos, you're able to find some sense of structure, and then you're able to use that throughout the rest of your life.
Sure, and that's the thing, and it helps you deal with fear. It helps you deal with communication with others. It helps you deal with your own anxiety. It helps you deal with your own self. Yeah. I mean, I realized, I have changed more in the past probably 2 years, just because I was like, you know what, I'm very narcissistic. I'm very selfish. and I'm like, to be able to help somebody on the mat. I mean, I'm sorry to say, I hate to say that. I used to, when white belts would walk in, I'm like, you're not going to be here. I'm not even going to learn your name. It's
a revolving door.
That was not long ago that I felt that way.
There is some truth to the fact that people usually are not going to stick it out.
That's true, but am I willing to be a teacher?
And that's part of being a brown belt. It's part of being a higher belt. It's your responsibility to help those people stick it out, because I think if I came in as a white belt and I had felt that attitude from the higher belts there, I wouldn't want to stay. Like, oh,
Sure.
I'm a lowly white belt here. I'm looked at as an annoyance. I don't want to stay in this community, because that's essentially what the academy is. It's a community.
And I've had guys that are at our own gym just be very, standoffish to me because of the way what I was giving to them,
And then
what I was giving to them.
back. Mm-hmm.
And then I finally, and this is through Professor Miller's help, through my wife's help, through all that, that it's kind of like, okay, you're giving them a certain vibe, and they're giving it back to you. Why are you mad about this?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you upset with this?
And then you're in a position as a higher belt, so the expectation is for you to set the tone of the vibe.
I should be very welcoming.
Yes.
Whether they stick it out or not, that's their journey. But I want to be able to walk with them and say, man, I've been through that. I know what you're feeling right now. I know you're getting your behind beat. And I know what it feels like to get your behind and just get your self-esteem thrown to the ground.
Yeah.
But then you end up taking it home and saying, you know what? Man, I can equate this to Quinn. How's he feeling right now?
Right.
Or how is he feeling me? That why he's acting like that? And am I taking this to my wife and showing her, man, I'm pissed for what happened at practice. Am I throwing that vibe to her?
Even through just your body language.
Yeah, just body language and stuff like that. So now, even as I drive home, when I've had a bad night or something, or I'm just tired or something, I'm just like, okay, I was just tired tonight. Just had a bad night, man. It's cool.
That's all it was.
I'm going to be there again tomorrow.
This too shall pass.
Yeah, I'm going to be there again tomorrow getting the crap beat out of me again.
It is disconcerting when you have someone come in that you've developed a relationship with and you're trained on the mat, because there is a certain level of friendship and connection that you develop when you're fighting with people, and then to have them disappear or go away, and then you're kind of uncertain about, like, wow, like, okay, now I don't know, I thought we were friends, but you're just gone now. And that happens in jiu-jitsu.
But it'll cause you to reconnect back with them. I'll actually end up finding myself saying, hey man, been missing you, stuff like that.
Well, yeah, you've reached out to me many times.
I am not the most social person. Actually, I love being alone at times. And for me to actually text somebody and say, man, or throw it up on the forum like we have the forum and act like I actually care.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not acting, I'm really caring. It's so foreign to me. It's so foreign to me. But to progress in my life and to progress in my jiu-jitsu is for me to take that wall down and say, you know what, I'm going to be vulnerable a little bit. I'm gonna, even though I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be like, I just got freaking tapped by a blue belt and I am not feeling this today and all that. But I want to be like, that vulnerability is going to be able to help that guy that, I went down to a certain gym this weekend and these guys are monsters. These guys are monsters. And I roll with a white belt to start off with. This kid's younger than I am. I know he's younger. Pretty thick kid, not fat, just thick kid. And I was nervous for a minute or two. I'm like, okay, I'm a freaking brown, but I got tricks for days. I got tricks for days. And I'm like, God, I could get tapped by this white belt. I could get tapped by this white belt today. And it's not going to even matter. This is an open mat. But I had that moment. And then when I started rolling with him, I was like, okay, what were you nervous about?
That's right.
Okay, you got tricks for days.
Well,
he's younger than you. He's more athletic. But you got stuff that he's never even seen.
Well, also back to the point of how great an instructor Professor Miller is, that's happened to me many times where I've gone to a different academy or gone to a tournament and felt like, okay, I'm kind of uncertain here. This guy looks like he's in great shape. But then once you connect, you feel like, oh, I have superior structure. And then you go back to, wow, like, I'm really grateful to have this type of training. My first NAGA, the North American Grappling Association tournament I got through, it was the no-gi portion. I got through 3 fights, I won. And the fourth one, I got through 2, lost the third, so then we were going into whoever got second place. I got tapped by a guy who had been training for 2 months by the knee bar. And I forgot that you could do knee bars. So I'm like, oh, that's right. I don't want my knee to be messed up. So, it can happen. It can happen where a guy just catches you out of the blue like that. But back to what you said about vulnerability, I think, being vulnerable equals power. So I think this is a really good place to wrap it up. Josh, is there anything that you want? Where can people find you if they want to connect with you, learn more about who you are as a person and what you do?
Oh, well, of course, Instagram, Facebook. I'm not really a social media guy yet. I don't have a website yet. That would be awesome, but there would be nothing to put up. I'm, a pretty normal cat. I think on Instagram, I'm JH Cook without an E, because if you put an E on it, that's Cookie. 71, so it's JH Cook 71. And Facebook, Joshua Cook. I don't even know how to even say whatever.
I'll put some stuff in the show notes. And then, of course, if you're in Greenwood, come train with us.
Yeah, and if I'd love if you're hearing this and you're jiu-jitsu or you're Isodicentric 15 group, we got a group Dupe 15. That's DUP.
Is that a
15? Yeah,
is that
that's
like
on
a face-
Facebook
a Facebook
definitely.
group? Well, that's important. So I'll put that in the
Yeah,
show notes.
Duke 15. Check those guys out. Compassionate South Carolina, medical marijuana, stuff like that. Trying to get these bills passed, man. Janelle Ralph, Janel, Ralph Ralph. I know if you get in touch with her on Facebook, she's big into the getting these laws passed, all this kind of stuff. Man, there's stuff that's good, but yeah, I'd love to come train at your gym if you want to do. Just say you got an open mat. A lot of
He's
friends
a jiu-jitsu
there.
junkie.
Yeah, I pretty much am, and yeah, it is weird. I just it becomes part of your life, but
Yes.
definitely come up. Triple Threat Jiu-Jitsu, Greenwood, South Carolina. Professor Alexander Miller. You get Terraplanis Jiu-Jitsu in Augusta. Professor Joshua Miller. For some reason, we love these Miller last names. Definitely check him out, Augusta, Georgia. These are great guys, man. These are fantastic jiu-jitsu guys. But
Cool, man.
thank
Well, this
you.
has been great. We should do it again. Appreciate you being so candid and
Man,
open,
love
man.
it. Love it. Thank
Vulnerability is power.
you. Yep.
All right, brother.
Take
Peace.
There you have it. What'd you think? Really good conversation, right? It just shines a light on this notion that we all have no clue what other people go through, even people that you're fairly close to and that or you've known quite a while. You just never know. You can find more about Isodicentric 15 duplication if you or any of your loved ones are affected by joining the Dupe 15 Alliance group on Facebook. It's DUP 15 Alliance group. Also, if you are interested in lending a hand to medical marijuana advocacy, there is a group, if you're here in South Carolina, the Compassionate South Carolina, I believe it's just called the Compassionate South Carolina Medical Marijuana Advocacy Group. You can hook up with those guys, and if you really, really want to connect with Josh, he is on Facebook. He's not a huge social media guy, but I think I can hook it up for you. Next week, or rather, hopefully later this week, I'm going to try to get these podcasts out quicker. It takes a lot of work, and I have a billion projects going on right now. So bear with me, guys. Bear with me. This one was really, really good. If you listen to the first interview episode, rather, with Dr. David Holzmer, he connected me to Valerie Driscoll, and she's a mindfulness-based stress reductionist expert. And what that basically means is she laid out all of the science and the neurochemistry in 40 years plus, or around 40 years of research behind this mindfulness movement, and how we can use these tools, these techniques, these strategies, these tactics to really approach life from a different way and have a choice in how we respond. Now, I know a lot of people view mindfulness as this woo-woo kind of out there kind of thing, but man, like I've been practicing mindfulness for a very long time now, about a decade, and she really laid it out for me, gave me some new resources, new tools, new ways of even looking at something that I had been practicing for a very long time, and I was super excited to talk to her and see that she was approaching it from a very scientific, rational, evidence-based standpoint. So hopefully you'll tune in for that. I will have that up very soon. And guys, we're making it happen. We're continuing. We're somewhere. Man, the listenership has exploded in the last week. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Like I said, I'm gonna get a regular pace going with this, and keep bringing you these awesome people. I'm enjoying the conversations. I hope you are. Catch you next time.